get started. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining from all across Asia. Thank you for being a part of this webinar. It's a very, very critical topic that we're talking about today, and I hope a lot of us have a lot of things to take away from today's conversation. This is me. I'm one of the co-founders. I'll be your host for the next 1 hour. I'm one of the co-founders of Darwinbox. Prior to Darwinbox, I spent significant amount of time at McKinsey and Google. That's me. Most of you know Darwinbox here. For the folks who don't know Darwinbox, Darwinbox is an end-to-end HR technology platform. We're present across 22 countries, 300 plus companies use us. We are an end-to-end technology platform, so we take care of the entire spectrum of HR in automating the HR aspects and also bring in a lot of new age aspects into the HR technology itself. Some of our clients that we had the privilege of working with and continue to work with, I think across sectors, across regions, had the good fortune to work with many path-breaking companies, innovative companies, and have learned a lot from all of them. One such company that we work with and we learned quite a bit from, and the CHRO of which is with us, Nanang, who will be our speaker today, who will be talking about what Tokopedia has done. He's the CHRO of Tokopedia, so he'll talk about what Tokopedia has done with respect to the context that we are in or the crisis that we are in. Nanang comes with significant experience across multiple sectors, but predominantly spent time in Unilever in multiple functions. Has also headed the region for Unilever. And also quite articulate and a vocal person talking about multiple aspects about his country and about HR as a function and business in general. So I think it's a great privilege, Nanang, to have you in this discussion. I would definitely love to introduce Tokopedia from my context. I think one of the biggest significant things that I've heard about Tokopedia is it contributes to 1.5% of the Indonesian GDP. It is one of the largest e-commerce players in Asia and the largest one in Indonesia. Topic for today, we're going to talk about the need for agility in your people strategy, especially while navigating through these troubled times, right? And we'll take the example of Tokopedia, and that's why we were giving the context of the organization to go through on how an organization dealt with it, because these are unprecedented times. I don't think anybody would have seen such a scenario ever. People who've talked about downturns in the past looked at economic downturns, but this is a time where it's not just economic, it's social in nature. It is also a health hazard. So people, I mean, across the world are sometimes clueless about how long this is going to go on for, what we need to do in such scenarios. And what we believed, and as technology partners, we do get to work with a lot of companies. We get to see a lot of companies do a lot of different things. And we thought, why not bring in some of the best learnings from across the board? Because in these times, I think there is more than the fact that somebody coming with an experience or an expertise. It's the community learning together and community contributing to each other that will help the most. And this is our small initiative in trying to bring some of the best ideas that we've seen in different companies to the fore. And hopefully this helps other companies learn, and we would definitely want to learn from every one of you and contribute back. So we're going to distribute this conversation into three different parts. One part is about the preparedness. Were we even prepared for such a scenario? Could we have done a few things as an organization in the long term that helps in the BCP practices? And when we see the first signs of it, how did we deal with that, right? So one part is around preparedness. The second is around, now that we are in the midst of it and no country has been spared or no organization has been spared, how do organizations adapt to this situation with agility, and how quickly can we react? And the third part is, once all this settles down, will there be permanent changes? What is the sustainability angle that we want to look at once all of this settles, right? And those are the three aspects we're going to talk about, predominantly being talked about by. Can actually organizations have a structure for a crisis like this, which is more long-term, a long-term structure? And the second thing is, once you've seen the first signs, how you've been able to react, etc. So over to you, Nanang.
I would say we are also probably part of the moderately prepared of companies in the companies, because I think when I actually moved from big companies like Unilever before, again moving to Tokopedia, in a way it's a 5 years old company if you look at where actually the company is accelerating, right? And I think we were moderately prepared because again the infrastructure is just a local company. It's not like a global big multinational companies and so on. So I think we have a very different early warning systems in a way in anticipating how's this situation happening. So that's why I really recognize and appreciating what Darren Box is doing, because I think most of the companies out there are just like me. We are moderately prepared or even less than that. So we are probably totally unprepared. And I think if I find an English word, what would be the one word that express the feeling of my team back then and the leadership was stunned. Like we were stunned. Like this is unpredictable, because again I think by the time we look at how the situation was going on, it was started in China, and then it spread slowly, but it's bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think in light of I think this is also some sort of a self-reflection, because we are bombarded with so many news and so many things that distract our attention. I think most of us, the reason why I call it stunt, because we didn't know that it's coming and then it's just there in our door. We thought it's something far away, it's not going to come very soon, and it's actually happened to be it's coming. So I think I would empathize to all of HR professionals or leaders who's actually joining this call. And then if you feel stunned, trust me, you're not alone. Every one of us were stunned into this entering this situation. So I can empathize with you. So what we actually do, we decided to be stunned just a little bit shorter. I think that's how to respond to this. If you go to the next slide. So we realize that the crisis is actually big when we start to see red dots everywhere, that countries are starting to get infected. Now, Indonesia is a very unique case. Again, if there is an Indonesian who joins the call, we were in a way, again, I can speak this on my behalf, so that's kind of disclaimer. I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone else in Indonesia, but I think we were in a stage of certain denials in the very early beginning, and saying that Indonesia is safe, despite all over the world you see that Indonesia is like a country being circled with all the red dots. So that was one thing. And then we decided not to be part of the denial stage of this change, because again, if you are an HR professionals, all of you learn too well about this change management curve, right? You start with denial, and you start with resistance, and you start to explore, then you accept. So that's the kind of curve that you usually went through when there's a change happen. And I think a lot of surround Indonesia was still on the denial stage. We decided not to be in denial stage, so we decided to do something about it. So by the 26th of Jan, that's just very early. So Tokopedia actually early initiated our BCP in January, before even the first COVID 19 positive case was confirmed a month after, which is on March 2nd of 2020. So what we did, we started doing precautions against COVID through international travel restrictions. So everyone who went abroad whoever coming back, they will be asked to do a self quarantine for 14 days. At that time, it was an awkward practice. Even some of our leaders were asking that questions, like why these people, they will be more productive if they come to office, participating in meetings and so on. But again, I'm blessed in a way. I feel grateful because our leaders are, especially in the top leadership, the founders and the core leadership team, the chiefs, we call them, are really fully aligned that we have to protect Tokopedia first from any risk. So we are very, very firm, and our founders are the role models for this. So I remember that he traveled to Singapore for a meeting. He come back and he basically say, I'm going to self quarantine myself. And I think by the time leaders walk the talks, and it's very easy to drive the change. So we did this self quarantine protocol as early as in Jan. And by the time the infections is going across beyond, China, we decided to put this self-temperature protocol earlier. So by the 14th of Feb, I remember that was a funny thing happening. So it was a Valentine Day, and then Tokopedia mostly is our nakama or employees are young. So there is this hype around. We do this kind of fun experience, employee experience events on Valentine where people can send things. Flowers, chocolates, all these things, and then suddenly there's an at the same time announcement about make sure that you wash your hands every time. So it's a bit awkward and awkward moments because you kind of have two events happening while we are trying to do this, but we decided to do it. It was unpopular in a way. So we decided to do this campaign around COVID-19 self-protections. We also put guest tracking at visitor registration desk. And again, during the presentation, I'll show you a couple of pictures to just give you a flavor and sense what was it. So that was the 14th of Feb. We decided to uplift our measures. And then again, this is very funny because we are staying in the Tokopedia Tower is like our head office, and it's a multi-tenant building. So Tokopedia is the only one who actually do this temperature checks and so on, because building management was basically saying, we don't think it's necessary. It will create scenes, unnecessary panics, and so on. So we decided to do it in our own floors. So whenever an employee is about to go into our floors, they'll get temperature check. If it's actually a state of fever, we ask them to go home and rest and claim for a sick leave. So that's the kind of prevention method that we did. So by 17th of Feb, we increased it again. So we decided to say, okay, let's just prepare. So this is where face mask price were not expensive, where vitamin C is easy to get, where hand sanitizers was actually not rare, and there's no scarcity on stock. So we decided to start procure these supplies as early as 17th of Feb. And again, what was the insights? We just simply saying we need just to be prepared. It's coming. It's coming. It's just it doesn't make sense if it's not coming anytime soon in Indonesia. And again, it's very funny because at that time, Indonesia as a society also still doesn't feel the urgency of doing something on here, but we decided to do it internally. Um, and then by the 4th of March, that was when actually the first declaration was March the 2nd. That's when the government says it is positive case was identified, and then immediately the next couple of days we actually convincing building management to do beyond Tokopedia in our office floor. And interestingly, it was not an easy conversations because they kind of like waiting, okay, let's just wait what would be the government mandates and so on and so on. And then we say, listen, if you are waiting for certain government directives, it would come not going to be anytime soon. So here's the protocol. Here is what we do in our floors. Why don't you just roll it out across all the buildings? And then they decided finally agree to that. So building management kind of do an end-to-end across tenants temperature checks with our protocol. That was in March 4th, 2020. And then after that, we decided to say, this is it. This is serious. We need to make sure it's a formal, non-official. So I think if you look at the first half of the slide, from the 26th of Jan to the 4th March, that was basically HR team. It was basically an HR conversation with the leadership, no one else involved. So by the time it was important, then we prepared things. Again, from a perspective of HR and office management, we decide to do an extra prevention. All this disinfectant, surface disinfectants, air disinfectant sprays, all these things was put in place, and then we kick it off as early as the 5th of March, and then on 9th March. So that basically the next week we kick off the formal business continuity plan committee. So the first BCP committee is only happening actually on the March 9th, 2020. And then we call up all the key leaders, our tech leaders, for example, our head of the logistics and value chain. So we basically call a BCP committee meetings. and then we distributed a couple of work streams. And then again, the whole things that I'm going to tell you is just on the people work stream. There are also other work streams that happening in parallel that I don't have it in here because I'm just focused on the people side. So we kick off formal BCP committee, and then on the 12th of March, we decided to run a public sessions about this COVID-19, because at the time, I think again, this is, I think, the risk of living in hyper connected societies. You start receiving all this news, emails, videos, everything about COVID-19, right? And then people start to get confused. What is actually is, how to prevent yourself. You could get a lot of hoaxes, news, fake information and so on. So we decided, let's clear the air. Let's get an expert. So we call actually an epidemiologist to come into our office and run a public session to our employees. So I think that was one that also make a difference, because there's a lot of activities and events that we do afterward helps with building the right awareness of what is COVID-19. So that was attended by around 300 people, online kind of live streaming kind of session. And then so from a BCP perspective, we decided, listen, right now work from home is a kind of who can, and it's a voluntary kind of thing. Who self quarantine is a kind of only for those who experiencing risk journey and so on. Let's do mandatory work from home. So that's the decision from BCP, the committee. So that's why the tech team, from the 9th of March to the 13th of March, so across the whole week, they are preparing for as many as VPN access we can get, laptops that we can procure, because there's a lot of people whose employees or nakama who still are using desktop, because we are actually preparing for a massive work from home end to end, regardless you are at whatever functions, right? And then it's not easy, because I think if you are in an operation kind of business, it's not easy, like procuring VPN, procuring laptops is just a snap of a finger. It's not like that. So there's a lot of efforts went there, and then it's all done in strictly confidential manners, because we don't want to create panics and stuff like that. So I think that the lesson learned, how you can make sure your BCP team is really strong, connected, and then it's done in a professional manner, because it's you don't want to create unnecessary panics by then, because we also don't know what will happen, because you kind of building a plane while you're flying it, right? So that, I think, the terms also. And then by the 13th of March, we announced that any events, because the rate of infection is getting high, so we decided any Tokopedia sponsored events out there need to cancel it. Any internal events, you need to cancel it. And you can imagine how many calls I'm receiving from from the marketing teams, from the products, from the business team, and saying, hey, Nanang, what's happening? Why should I cancel this big exhibition where we are going to ride on discounts on travels and so all these things? And I have to tell them, listen guys, just listen to me. This is important. There will be an announcement coming soon. Keep it confidential, but we're going to go for actually a extreme protection as possible for all employees, including we don't want to be part of gatherings that might actually initiated the infections, right? And I think we heard about a lot of big infections happening due to the large gathering. So we are trying to protect not just employees, but also Tokopedia as a company's credentials, to be part of solution, not to be part of problems. So by the 16th of March, we declare that mandatory work from home. So we actually did, I think in between what we did, we actually call a town hall. It's like a big town hall. And then it was done already online, because a lot of leaders actually, we kind of trying to showcasing. So this is how things are going. So it is also awkward, because it's actually in the office, like everyone's still in the office, but our leader said, you know what, let's do this town hall online. And then actually our founders, William, was opening the session and saying, guys, the reason why I'm doing this town hall online, because I would just want to portray you how we are going to work going, kind of onward, going forward, in light of the announcement I'm going to make. So it is a very witty kind of a setup of a town hall, because I think that send a big messages. Oh wow, we are moving to something different, right? So that's actually what happened. So we announced the mandatory work from home all over that online town hall, and then we strive as much as possible. So by the 24th of March, because there's a lot of these laptops, it was in sequence and batches to be there, and online VPN access also need to be installed in physical laptops. The employee needs to come in and all these things, all the logistics, right? So we were happy because by the 24th of March, we can actually make sure that all employees, regardless who they are, including the customer service outsourced employees, are all can actually work from home and still have access all to these in tools, all this FAQ that they need to answer when customers reaching out to them and so on, from home. So that is actually the first part, I would say. So I think we can actually did that, and I think it was good. So this is just a couple of snapshots what we did. So to build momentum prior to that workforce protection main protocol, we call it, in that first 2 weeks of the virus infection. This is what we're doing. So if you look at I don't know whether this is too small for you to see, but on the left side, for example, that was something that we did as early as in January. So whenever there's a guest and visitor coming in, we ask them, have you come or traveled from a country that has infected with COVID-19? So if they say yes, we actually gonna call our host, whoever inviting them for a meeting, and saying, we would recommend that if you really want to do this, then make sure that there's a distance. We will give the visitor a mask just to protect, and I hope you're kind enough to explain to the visitor the reason why we do this, because we want to protect ourselves from COVID-19, right? So this is what we do, try to protect, from outside the Tokopedia family. So every visitor by then has need to declare whether they already came in from COVID-19 countries or not. And then what we also do from a self-prevention prevention campaign. So we put all these posters everywhere, and this is the one that I was telling you was a bit funny, because this was launched during the Valentine kind of events, and it's kind of weird, but it's important. So we actually did that back then. And then the educational sessions, we actually get in an expert, and then the reason, and then again, I think someone that he was actually a former epidemiologist, so it was the right session to run. So it was indeed agility in a way. So we discussed everything was set. So we ran the session with our with my old friend, Dr. Johnny, on this one back then. So if we go to the next slides then, so that's work from home, right? And I think couple of changes that we keep doing along the way, and I think that is important, because I kind of heard that we seems an HR professional seems to stop kind of evolving by the time we declare, okay, everyone is safe, and that's done. My job is done. Let's just come back to the things that we need to look at, and then go on. Now I think what happens is that I think it's basically the same with any other changes initiative you are initiating. I think work from home, it's also a big change, right? So we learn a couple of things, and then we actually keep evolving. So this is actually what I will tell you in the next couple of slides on how we keep evolving this whole BCP to make sure that it's not just about making our employees safe, survive, but also thrive. So survive and thrive is some sort of a combinations that we put as a principle behind the BCP.
There's
So
one question, Anang, around
yes.
which is contextual from Julie, which is, uh, does this BCP committee, is there a ongoing existing BCP committee which gets into action, or do you create this for given scenarios?
So these are all ideas that we found along the way. So if I'm going to share you a couple of things that we did in Tokopedia on the last 1.5 2 weeks, that are all was not prepared. It was not prepared. So that's why I would put myself as a moderately prepared, because I think a lot of ideas come on the go.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting, because toward the end, I will tell you also, we were trying to find a benchmark, right? where should we benchmark ourselves, whether the things that we do is already good, right? And I think that's the question of all HR professionals. Is there anything that we benchmark with? And we actually find one on, there is this McKinsey study published on the March 16. And again, if you look at it, it's very interesting. It's issued only by March 16. And of course, there has to be a study that happening about 1 or 2 weeks before. But I think just like us, they also, all these experts, consulting companies, they also feel that now it's time that we need to create some sort of standard, industry standard benchmark and so on and so on. So we actually did our benchmark with them. I'll show it later toward the end of the slide. But to answer that questions, it's all iteration, and I think that's the culture that I want to build. And I'm actually grateful because I can see it, and it's like an air that everyone is breathing in Tokopedia, or probably most of the tech companies. Iteration is the norms of the day, right? So we keep asking ourselves what else, what we can do, what else, what we can do, and then all these ideas actually came in on the fly.
Yeah.
So that's
I
the
think
answer, right?
it's great to see, Nanang, because a lot of these ideas in hindsight seem right. But I can completely imagine when you went through them, coming up with these ideas, getting the leadership buy-in, making sure you're taking tough calls against visitors and marketing teams were all tough because they were all ahead of time. I mean, not very
Yes,
ahead of time,
exactly.
but still ahead of time, where people might think this is too panicky, or like the building management example, right? So I
Yes,
think that
yes.
in hindsight, I think great ideas. But yeah, I think the one thing I took away is just the ideas being on overdrive and being iterative. I think that's something that's great, incredible to take away from. So I think the second part of what you wanted to talk about, and maybe we spoke about the first few steps, right? And as you said, there's nothing like declaring victory because we don't know how long this is going to be for, how much big impact this is going to have. So what are the ongoing things that you're going through? And there are a lot of things that you're changing as an organization. So how you're dealing with that is something that I think everybody wants to know.
Thank you, Rahit. Yeah. So just like what I've said to you, I think we were relieved, but I think this is how the situation will be. You will be given an opportunity to kind of like exhale and then kind of relieve that we tackle this part, right? And then you thought that that would be the end, and then you can have like an extended kind of breaks, feeling safe and secure that we have done something right, we protect our people, and then that's it. And unfortunately, I think COVID tell us that, unfortunately, those fantasy world is gone. I mean, because you need to stay on your feet and then be alerted, and then keep actually thinking what else you need to do so you can prevent some sort of an explosive time bomb that probably happen if you don't actually anticipate those things, and foresee those things in the beginning. So that's what we actually did. um, so first thing that came up back then was, there is this question around how can we make sure that work from home wasn't effective. So we actually created a long documents with a very meticulous, point by point policy and processes, like you have to do daily check-ins, all these things, basic stuff basically. And then we just realized, by the time we publish those long documents, and again, we are talking about millennials, below 27 years old, as actually the biggest population of my workforce, right? we don't we actually feel that there's a lot of kind of feedback come to me, and then actually we have accountability challenges. People are coming to meetings late and all these things, and people are kind of struggle with actually having a norms in general. What is virtual meeting norms supposed to be? Making sure that minutes are there and all these things. So then that was coming in that discussions on, after we declare. So that was what, in 16th of March, right? And then so I basically run, because I actually again well, Tokopedia structure, when I came in, I actually restructured the HR team, and I created a dedicated employee experience team. And then this is a pretty much different with how other companies are structuring it. where usually when you're talking about employee experience, you are changing your HR services or shared services, and then combining your culture and engagement team into it, and then that's it, right? And I think that what most companies are doing when they creating a people experience function or employee experience functions is some sort of just moving on your HR services into the next level. Well, I have a different point of view, and I decided to change the way HR organization in Tokopedia is by creating a dedicated people experience function. And actually employer branding is part of that function, because I believe by the time you are at, because you're spending a lot of money and effort and in investment in attracting external candidates to go in, and I think most of the time companies have forgot that these employees also need to be highly engaged with creative ideas, of high quality comms packages, videos and stuff, even more when they are employees, right? So my employee experience team is pretty unique because there is an employer brand functions actually sitting there, and then connecting outside in and inside out kind of employee value proposition and communicating across. So then, so I decided to give my employer branding team, which is mostly millennials, and saying, guys, I need your help. We want to create work from home playbook that not just going to be helping people in terms of productivity, but also thriving across this whole work from home experience. And then they took up the challenge. By the 18th of March, they launched the work from home playbook. That again, I actually shared it to everyone else through my LinkedIn account because I think it's a great products that we were not foreseeing that we needed. But after two days kind of sprint, it came out. It all created by my team, and then it was actually good because I can see a lot of people are getting benefit out of it. It was 21,000 kind of browse, and some people actually download it for free. So that actually a good contribution that Tokopedia also did for Indonesian professional community, I hope. I'll talk about this later because I have a slide talking about this after this, just to give you flavor. What is this work from home playbook and how that works? And again, in the spirit of crowdsourcing, for all of you who attended this call, feel free to come to my LinkedIn and just download that playbook. Feel free to circulate it around. And the second one, what you also learn is that more and more, we learned that the challenge in Indonesia as a country specific, I cannot speak on behalf of other countries in Asia, but in Indonesia specific, is actually the limited health capacity when people get sick. And then based on the discussion with, again, with my old friend, and I was saying, we need to create a health protocol for people. And then the intention is, how can we make sure people were not going to a hospital or a doctor, because again, this is actually change of habit again. In business as usual days, when you get sick, you get fever, okay, let me just go to hospital, visiting a GP, and I'm getting a receipt, and then I'm coming home and then, kind of cure myself, right? Now, in COVID-19 situation, hospital is actually the biggest red zones of potential infections. And we don't want people to get infected with a good intention curing a common cold, and then they ends up going back home with a COVID-19 virus. And I think that was a big alert, big question that we put to ourselves in the BCP committee. How can we prevent this? And again, with the agility spirit, we do a couple of sprints. We contacting a couple of partners. So by the 19th of March, that's the third or fourth day of the work from home, we launched our COVID 19 health protocol, where Nakama can access virtual GP services. So if it's common cold, they can actually issue, this virtual GP can actually issue a receipt. Then Nakama can go to pharmacies, and then get the medicine and so on, without spreading or without exposing our employees to a bigger risk, bigger infection node in a way in a lot of hospitals in Indonesia. Now, we also even extend it a bit. So we are actually procuring some sort of an standby a medical doctor sorry, it's like an executive kind of medical doctor for our senior leadership. Because of course we have health protocol, that's one, but I think senior leadership is even more critical employees that we want to protect. So instead of going through health protocol, we actually give them one phone number. It's basically a standby medical doctor, where whenever they have medical concern and so on, they just contact that doctor, and then the contract is it's 24/7 kind of standby doctor. So that's what we also do. That's 19th of March. So we did that health protocol. And then we decided to check again what will happen, in terms of effectiveness, is productivity remains, and so on. So we kick off a work from home effectiveness survey to leaders, because again, if you I think the most important thing in maintaining productivity as the biggest challenge, as Rohit just mentioned in the beginning, is to make sure that people are accountable, and then they attend the virtual meetings. There's a clear minutes and there's a flow follow through of that minutes of meeting. So then by the time you have another virtual meetings, actions are done, and then productivity delivered. So what we did back then, we did that survey, and then it's again reliving with the whole work from home playbook. We have all these things. Productivity wise, we score at 4.2 out of a scale of 5. So then that's actually a good news that help us be assured that things that we have done actually works.
Actually, Nanang, one
Now,
question there. I think a
yes,
lot of questions here.
the next slide, this is actually work from home playbook, right? So have a look. So what I would suggest, how would I increase productivity of my team during work from home? Again, have a look to the link that I've shared here through my LinkedIn profile. You can also see it actually a post that I posted about 2 weeks back. So we think when you do work from home playbook, you need to look at it holistically, as if it's a whole human being, right? So you need to also give an advice, how make sure that you are not getting ill throughout work from home, what kind of wellness kind of initiative you need to think of when this is a work from home as a ways of working. So I think a lot of discussion over work from home was limited around how can we attend virtual meetings, minutes, follow through action, engagement. It's pretty kind of a limited box. So think about beyond the box. You also need to think about the whole of a person. So empathize. If this is your employees, what do the person need? Now, here's interesting thing, because again, I actually asked my employer brand team who created this, right? So they procure support from the creative team, from the marketing, all these things. An idea that I actually, as an employee, as like a Gen Y in a way, or Gen X, actually, I'm kind of like in the borderline of Gen X and Gen Y. I wasn't even think that a Spotify playlist was essential. And then that's what my team was proposing to me. Oh, by the way, Pa, we also provide a work from home Spotify playlist for our employees. And I was like, is that really necessary, guys? Trust me, if you are millennials, this is really important to make sure that during this work from home you have a good playlist that can help you navigating all this being alone kind of thing. And interestingly, this Spotify playlist end up being crowdsourced, and so a lot of employees are starting adding in. It's end up now 300 songs in the playlist, and then it's become a collective playlist of Tokopedia, right? And I think again, this is kind of a blind spot that you won't see if you are thinking, I am responsible to define, the whole BCP action myself, or HR team myself. Trust me, I think that era has long gone. So you need to crowdsource as many as ideas as possible, and then this is what actually did that the Tokopedia team did. Now, from a work from home effectiveness survey, this is I think a survey methodology that you can also, in a way, copy and in a way still with pride. What we asked, basically there are 3 questions. One is around the virtual meetings, because again, if you talk about work from home, if you use Pareto, very simple Pareto, right? 80% of your work from home, basically virtual meetings, right? And is virtual meeting ecosystem works? So that's what we ask people. It's too small to see in the slide, but we ask, is the technical side of virtual meeting works? Is people are okay, in terms of accountability as there, um, would is if I can just because I can also I need to see. So like minutes of meeting made by my team is clear and easy to be followed up, and so on, so on. So that is one part called virtual meeting environment. How is it going? The second one is actually technical ease, and I think a lot of work from home frustration was around, sending different emails. If again, I think these days, I assume most of you are on cloud, but I think if you are not on cloud, I can imagine how difficult it is working virtually. Like as simple as sending this particular PowerPoint. Is it the V1 or is it the V7? Is it the V21? Which one is it, right? And then again, I think some organizations are still struggle with that. And I think if all of you are on cloud, then those are just one big barriers that we can take, because everyone can go into the link and then everyone will see this is the final version of certain documents. There is no more V1 to V21, in the old era kind of thing. So if you are on cloud, then that is a big advantage already when you are doing a work from home. So technical ease is something that we actually look at, and then this is where enterprise IT or tech team in Tokopedia is keep being given feedback on this. And the last one is working culture, and I think this is interesting because um, a lot of this work from home is also cultural elements. Like people, very simple. There's this question. We usually have this big whiteboard, right? In a physical space where you can just draw things and all these things. Um, Discussing meetings, brainstorming, and then through that whiteboard, then come up a big decision on so many things. So we actually say you can always put up a Google Slides, a blank space of Google Slide, and why don't you start typing there, right? And then you can't do a whiteboard thingy, but you can type at least ideas and stuff like that. Can that works? And then leaders are start experimenting using different type of technology and virtual product in to replace the kind of whiteboards and stuff. And again, it's actually it's kind of learning by doing kind of thing. And then I think agility of your leaders will matter. So that's actually what happens. So the role of HR professionals more on making sure that we gather the data around work from home and then giving feedback to leaders if there's things that we need to change. But so far we did the survey, and then we actually do that like regularly. So I would rather I would recommend you to start doing your work from home survey on weekly basis. Now, the last one, I think, from this chart, if you go to the next slides, and then the last one, this is actually the McKinsey kind of survey we actually did. So McKinsey published this study actually in the 16th of March. We immediately take it and we measure ourselves, and then again, we were actually happy to see that most of our actions are already aligned with the checklist of things that companies need to consider based on their study of over 200 global companies BCP. I think this is a good reference for all of you, and then start somewhere and then look at whether all these elements are there. Again, maybe just to quickly skip. So this is where we said we keep evolving. Now, interestingly, again, we are facing an entirely new generation in the workforce. After 2 weeks of working from home, this is actually very new. They actually start saying that, what, it's very boring. It's work, 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 work. I have challenges on my mental well-being now. I need something. We need something, to help us. So what we did, um, we actually provided an online events, and then again, this is where having an employer brand in your people experience team was, I think, one of the best organization decision I ever made, that I'm keep playing in my head. That was the right actions to do, because all this engagement with the employees were running very, very well. And then it's, all these events were coming up with the nice ads and all this thing. So we actually launched our Work from Home series. We have a yoga online class right now, and it's actually series happening every Wednesday. We have Zumba online classes happening every Friday. We have every days we kind of build excitement across the week, so it is not boring. It's not just work. It's something exciting happening every single day, in weekdays. And instead of looking for things to do outside Tokopedia, we actually provide it inside Tokopedia, including like learning series and mindfulness and all these things. So, you know, IG competitions, TikTok challenge, all these things. So basically all this, I kind of, outsource this to my millennials team to plan things. And then this is the last thing we did. And then like, at least this is what I can say for now, how we keep evolving until the end of this week. So by tomorrow, we are going to launch a mental well-being kind of platform where people can reach out. Again, this is in Bahasa, but this is basically the launching of a safe space where we actually partner with a vendor, with an organization. And again, if you talk about this, how can you get all this thing happen? Agility quickly, new normal, right? It's a volatile, uncertain, complex, agile, FUCA, right? I mean, we've been talking about FUCA. People were conceptually see it, but they don't really feel it. And I think COVID 19 is a real FUCA, real life scenarios, and then now it's happening. I think what I think the lesson learned is that you might feel alone, but you're not. So we can. So I think my point is that as an HR professionals, right? There's a lot of reach out that you can do. Myself with tech companies HR are creating a WhatsApp group actually to coordinate things together. To kind of, for example, like, is there any news that you hear? Shall we do something? Like, for example, recently we issued a announcement to forbid people to go home, like going back to their hometown. And we kind of like, do you declare it in the company or you just rely on the government? And then we said, okay, let's just do together, declare. And then all the tech companies within that WhatsApp group actually declaring it. So what I'm saying is that you might feel alone, but you're not. You are together in a way. Chances to collaborate are everywhere. The second one is employee experience. I think we've been talking about employee experience in so many HR seminars and so on and so on. I think companies present in employees' moment that matters. That's what employee experience is becoming more and more important, right? So EX will become more important in the upcoming days. So have a look into your EX, making sure your employee experience, whoever leading it, is with you in BCP. It's very important to see most of companies are approaching BCP from a safety perspective, right? So you have your BCP team mostly with people from safety, from core business, and then you missing out the guy from the employee experience, or who probably is the most important right now. So bring that person on board, because this employee experience is important. And the last one is productivity is actually agility. I think more decision and ways of working will be centered on agility, and I think that's the most important thing for companies to survive and thrive going forward. Again, this is big statements. I don't have any very prescriptive kind of thing, but this is just a points to reflect for all of
No, I
us.
think
I
in
think
terms of, and maybe I should ask you this question and put you in a spot. What do you think is the biggest change that will happen in the new normal, in the ways of working, according to you?
yeah, it is creating actions that you believe it is long-term wise would be good, yet short-term people can feel it, and you have to do it like that. Like, you can't wait until everyone else agree in the whole leadership team. You just need to kind of put yourself at the most vulnerable spot as possible and say, here is what I think I have to do from a BCP perspective, guys. If something happened, you know what, you can blame on me, but this is one thing we have to do. I think that courage needs to come, and then HR people needs to be, right now needs to be at the upfront for that, more and more. I think not just HR, every leaders needs to be that vulnerable and saying, we don't have all the data, we don't have all the right information to make decisions, but you know what? Let's do this. If anything happens, you can blame on me. And I think it's very difficult conversations to do, right? I mean, you don't want to be blamed in this kind of risky situation, but it's the counterintuitive. You have to be the one who needs to firstly say, let's do this. If something happened, you can blame on me.
And I think that's a bold advice for a lot of people across the board. It's not just with HR. I think as leadership, as CXOs, I think there is, in these times, I think there is a need to be decisive, need to make a few mistakes if you need to, but be quick and agile. I think that's been the consistent theme across all of the things that you spoke about as well. In terms of the the workplace of the future, is there something that you think will change, whether it is on gig workforce, work from home, the way people do BCPs going forward? Because VUCA, now people have realized what VUCA is, right? So is
Yeah.
there for like a constant BCP team? So are there things that are going to change permanently, or things that are going to be introduced into organizations which we've not seen enough of before?
Yeah. I cannot speak on behalf of other side of the business, but from an HR perspective, it's very interesting. Like if you ask me, who are my number one, kind of person in my head, right? In a way, is my people partners and the whole people operation and experience. These are two kind of person that I regularly keep in touch, and then keep asking them to innovate together, because I think in the past, employee experience has been a big buzzword of everyone. Like everybody talks about it, but this is the moment of truth, right? If you can actually give the right, if you are providing the right employee experience at this moment in time, they will remember it throughout whatever years coming forward in their tenure with the company. But if you don't actually provide it now, whatever happened by the time business back to normal, they kind of like, you know what, that was the period when I need the companies the most, and nobody talks to me. And that actually point to ponder, and I think it will change forever, because we really realize, actually companies are more and more depend on ourselves. I mean, you can't rely on whoever out there going to come and to tell you what to do. You just need to do it yourself, right? And I think from and again, I kind of like coming up with an entirely different perspective. A lot of companies are talking about, what about costs, what about all these things, right? It is important, but what is more important is, do we put an ecosystem where our companies are being feel that they're being taken care of, that there is an empathy, there is somebody out there that I can reach out when I need help, and so on. Because you can imagine the mood of companies feeling that, oh gosh, we are alone in this. If you are acting like that, what would your employees feel, right? They are feeling even more alone, and then they are even feeling more, quote unquote, not well taken care of. And of course, HR always, kind of saying, well, you know what, that's the role of leaders to taking care of their team. But trust me, leaders are also looking for help, right? They are also human, right? So I think that's where we in HR needs to think bigger. How can we, our role is to creating an ecosystem that allows leaders also have an answer to all these questions that their employees would have. I think that's the most noble, the most important HR role could possibly be in this kind of crisis. That would be my
I think
concluding thoughts.
that's a great message, Nanang, for everybody on the call. I think I think that's what we had from both of us. But I think there are 2 3 questions, Nanang, and I want to take one of them before we close, which summarizes a lot of questions that were there. I think the one question was around productivity, right? So while there is a lot of work that you're doing, and it is inspiring how much doing you're doing for your nakamas on their mental well-being, physical well-being, and keeping them safe. There is a question on the whole productivity aspect of it, right? So we've shifted from being in office to work from home. This is across contact centers, this is across operations, this is across every other function, marketing, sales, all of this. Now, how do you track, or how do you ensure productivity? Is there something that you're doing to track that, and also doing in terms of ensuring that there is, and a lot of questions are around that, right? So whether it is tracking, whether it is ensuring productivity, whether it is actually saying, have you seen better productivity at home compared to office, or the vice versa? Those are the questions, and maybe that's the last question we should take before we close. And yeah, would be
Sure,
a hear from you.
sure. So I think the work from home, I think the playbook, I would recommend that you have a look into it. The way we do work from home, it is actually very rigor. So any employees will need to log in into their system, to their attendee system. So we partner with Darwin Box, right? But we actually have a different system on that one, still. But anyway, so they basically need to basically sharing that. So they have to actually record their attendance in a way. And I think even the Darwin Box also have technology to do that, or other platforms have actually that feature. And then here is the thing, here is the key. I know this is another unpopular decision. A lot of our nakama kind of like complain about it, but we put it as a process. They need to put as a bullet points what have they done today, and where would the boss can look at that results in the G drive. So the link needs to be put in there. So you can claim that I have completed a sales call with these customers and then secured whatever amount of money, and then enter, right? But then the system, the policy is saying, can you attach the link where actually the boss can see how does it looks like, what money that you're talking about, and so on and so on. Now we do that in discipline, like an in discipline basis. We keep doing a weekly checking from an HR perspective, and then flag if, let's say, some employees are not submitting it, and leaders are kind of approving it on daily basis. And then there's also a ritual of daily check-ins. So we said that you have to do daily check-ins at least 30 minutes, and then that is something that run across. And then as you see from the survey, actually the survey measure that productivity is increasing a lot. And I think that is because, again, this is a hypothesis, and I think this is probably another concluding thoughts. By the time you are giving a peace of mind to your employees that everything else outside work you have an answer, then people can start focusing on their work. And I think the tricky thing in this kind of crisis, when peace of mind are not there, it distracted your employees, right? And I think that's what we are trying to also answer from a productivity point of view. We have an ecosystem that trying to tackle any possible worries that Nakama has, and then that's like a circling them. And then you know what? You are Nakama. We are protecting you on every possible angles. Just focus on doing the best for the company right now, and then the rest, hopefully we can help you to taking care of it with the ecosystem we have. So I think that's the answer, Rohit.
Perfect, perfect. So I think great answers, Nanang. I personally, for Darwin Box, have a lot of things to take away as well. I think there is a technology angle, and like you pointed out, there is a lot of work we are doing with our clients across Asia on enabling this kind of productivity measures and as features into Darwin Box, and that's a common ask. But I think the second part of it, which is equal balancing thing, is the managers and the leadership making sure the check-ins happen, making sure there is a safe space for employees to do their bit. I think a combination of both, and you as Tokopedia and you as a leader, HR leader, have actually displayed this. And thank you so much for doing this for your organization. Thank you again for sharing so much. For everybody on the call, we will share, and there have been a lot of questions, Nanang, on sharing your playbooks and your service useful. Hope you take good care of your employees and your loved ones, and we hope we can do more to help you in these times. And really, really thankful, Nanang, again for doing this. This has been extremely helpful for all of us, and we hope you do great things going forward as well, and we could be a partner in some of those things.
Thank you, Rohit. It's also, I think this is the least thing that Tokopedia can do as a company, because we believe that we serve a bigger purpose. I mean, that's the whole idea of the company, right? So I myself personally will be proactively sharing whatever we can do through my LinkedIn for the rest of the company in Indonesia and even beyond. Whenever we can actually inspire, a couple of good practices out there. Thanks a lot. Thank you for giving me space also to extend this purpose of the company. Thanks
It's
a lot,
been
Rohit.
our pleasure, and thank you so much as well. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good day ahead, and please continue to be safe. Stay safe.